How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great. So I thought that I would talk a little bit about my story and then walk through a meditation. One of the things that I do, and I'll talk a little bit about that, is meditate using music. So we'll do that. And then, if you have questions as we're going, or if you have questions at the end, feel free to ask whatever it is that you want to ask. But I'll get rolling. So we're going to go back in time a little bit. We're going to go back in time 20 years, 1 month, and about 21 days-ish. It's May 5th, 2005, and I have achieved the American dream. I am the CEO of a company that I founded several years earlier. I'm married to my college sweetheart, and we have 3 amazing children. We live in a huge colonial house, new cars in the driveway, vacation all over the world. I'm a former NCAA All-American athlete. I have achieved more things in my life than most people can even dream of. And I'll let you in on a little secret. I am suffering from the worst depression I have ever experienced in my life. At least as far as I can remember. The first time I felt severely depressed and profoundly sad and suicidal, I was 12 years old. And so I carried this for about 30 years, off and on. Depression comes, it goes, never goes away. But it's something that I lived with for a very long period of time. And I just want the pain to stop. And so I go home that night and I have a conversation with my wife, and I talk to her about my feelings of detachment and my frustration and anger about not being able to feel happiness. And I literally just want this white noise that's whirring around in my head to be over. And I am fully convinced that everybody in my life would be better off without me here, especially my wife and my children, because I don't want them to be exposed to me. The next day, I go to my office and I'm sitting at my desk on the 5th floor of the former Bank of New Haven building in downtown New Haven, Connecticut, looking out the window. People are running around the office. It's a Friday afternoon. Phones are ringing. They're getting their coffee. They're talking about the weekend. And I am ensconced behind an 8-foot oak door, staring out the window, trying desperately not to jump. And I spent 3 hours looking out that window, and it's a losing battle. I've got to get out of there, otherwise I'm going to lose that battle, and I'm going to land on the concrete below. So I grab my bag, I get in the car, and now I'm driving up Interstate 95, 110 miles an hour, sobbing uncontrollably, looking for a rock to drive my car into, because I just want it to be over. I've had enough. In that moment, something tells me to call my wife to say goodbye. So I call her cell phone, and this is before smartphones. I know that she's not going to answer the phone, right? I'll leave a voicemail, I'll say goodbye, and that'll be the end of it. Well, guess what? She answered the phone. I can hear our 3 kids running around in the kitchen, and I'm saying goodbye. I'm telling her that I'm killing myself and I've had enough. And this is where another miracle occurs, and several miracles occurred over the next 3-4 days. My sister is a dean at Princeton University, and she's very experienced with suicidality and depression. She hasn't been to my house in 3 years, and she's coming to surprise our kids. She's an exit behind me on the highway. She's calling my wife on the house phone. So my wife's got me on the cell phone and my sister on the house phone, and they're going back and forth. And my wife says, "Listen, your sister's about a mile behind you. You need to get off the highway." So they talk me off the road. The rest of the day is pretty much a blur. I wake up in an acute care mental health facility in a beautiful Connecticut town where I spent time basically getting my head right, taking medication, and starting the journey to health. I lived One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If you've ever seen that movie, I lived that for a month, and it saved my life. You see, in the course of chasing the American dream, I let my ego become the CEO of me, and I completely lost myself. And so coming out of the hospital, we were faced with the choice. And my wife and I had a very difficult conversation about what we were going to do next. And we didn't know where that would take us as a couple, for sure. all I knew is that I needed to be healthy for myself. I needed to find some peace. And I talked about not being able to experience happiness, and I desperately wanted to experience that. And so the choice to me was pretty clear. Learn as much as you possibly can about what makes you tick, why you are living the way that you're living, what has occurred that has brought you to the point of wanting to drive your car off the road on May 6th, 2005. And it's led me down this path to an understanding of the fact that when we connect with ourselves, the path forward becomes very clear immediately. And we learn, and I've learned, that life's magic is in the smallest of moments. It's not in the big things that we all think we should be chasing. It's in these really infinitesimal engagements or interactions with other people or nature or other things that happen throughout the day. The only way to experience those moments is to be connected to yourself and to really experience being present in the moment. And I don't mean that in sort of a cliche. I mean it as fact, right? Living in the moment. And after learning that, it was sort of an epiphany that these small moments occur, and it's like, wow, this is what life is about. Nothing else really matters to me. So I wrote this book, which is a story of my life. It's a story of the journey that I've gone through to come to an understanding of what I'm talking about. And I take people back to my childhood and I work my way forward. And just like therapy or just like the journey to health, it's not a linear experience, right? It's very circuitous. You're all over the place and you come to an understanding and then you take 5 steps back and then you go 10 steps forward. And it's just a constant evolution. So this was 20 years ago. I'm 60 years old. I still every day am learning something new about me, right? So that process doesn't stop. But it's been a gift, and I have taken my experiences into the boardroom. I run several businesses, and I have now taken this whole concept of self-connection into my leadership. And I coach high school athletics. I coach a high school lacrosse team. I've brought this into that experience as well. So I work with teenagers on things that I'm going to talk about, meditation and some other things. But it has opened up this experience of there's coffee in the fridge. And so what is there's coffee in the fridge? And why is it called there's coffee in the fridge? About 3 years into this experience of evolution, we were out of money. Right after I got out of the hospital, we worked on selling the business, we sold the business, and I focused on my mental and emotional health the way that I had pursued my athletic expertise with disciplined efforts every day to understand exactly who I am and what makes me tick. It's the way I'm wired. I want to be the best at whatever I'm trying to do. No pressure, right? But that's just the way that I think. So we're 3 years into it, and I have to say that one of the most important things that I learned was moving from this mentality of have to and must do to I am choosing to, right? So we're 3 years in and I have to go back to work, right? Well, I don't have to do anything. But when you start to look at the choices and the options, if I don't go back to work, we're going to sell our house. We're going to move. We may not stay together as a couple. I don't know where this is going to take us. In that moment, though, I am now choosing to go back to work because I don't want to flip everybody else's life upside down. My children are still living in the house. My wife is living in the house. And so there's other responsibilities. And when I weighed the pros and cons of choosing one option versus the other, the obvious choice to me was go back to work. So I've been in the insurance and financial market space for most of my career. I decided to go into the well-being space because it felt pretty good. Somebody that was starting to live a happier, healthy existence to be in well-being. And I was going to go on my first business trip. And you can imagine I was pretty anxious about it. This was a life that almost destroyed me. And now I'm going back in to a certain extent. It was adjacent, but still, it was a very anxious-ridden experience. So I said to my wife, listen, I'm catching a very early flight to the airport tomorrow, and I put some coffee in the fridge. I'm going to grab the coffee, and I'm going to go to the airport. My wife's a night owl. She doesn't get out of bed before 7, and she's up till 1 in the morning. I go to bed at 9 and wake up at 5, right? The alarm goes off at 4 in the morning. I get up, I tiptoe around the bed. I lean over to give my wife a kiss on the cheek, and she turns to me wide awake and she says, "There's coffee in the fridge." And I started to cry. I laughed. And in that moment, right, in that nanosecond, what she was saying to me is, "I see you. You are loved. It's all going to be fine." And those are the magical moments that I'm talking about. So that's where "there's coffee in the fridge" comes from. It's now a metaphor that we use in my family and people that know me use all the time. When something magical occurs in your life, you have found what I call coffee in the fridge. It's really that simple. And I live moment to moment in my life looking for and experiencing these moments, because that's what happens when you're present, right? Coffee in the fridge is everywhere. It happens all the time. And it's a pretty magical experience. So the practical matter of taking care of myself, because I suffer from depression. It never leaves. It's there. It's in my DNA. My children all have depression, have experienced depressive episodes. It's genetic. It's something that never goes away. I also experience anxiety. My anxiety is what actually leads to my depression. If I can control my anxiety, I will not slip into depression. I've had some pretty serious depressive episodes over the last 10 years. Nothing where I've gone over the edge and I couldn't control it, but when my anxiety starts to bubble up, I can typically look at my life and the things that I've been doing over the past couple of days, and I can always pinpoint what's missing. And so I created this list that I call my roadmap to health. Note to self: don't walk to a speaking gig in Houston because it's hot as hell. And I'm still sweating, so I apologize. Anyway, I created this roadmap to health. It's not complex, it's nothing new, it's not magical, but these are the 10 things that I do regularly to control my anxiety. So the first one is meditation, and we're going to talk about this a little more deeply. The second one is journaling. And you know, I have this list. It works for me. I'm not suggesting that it works for anybody else. I think that everybody needs to create their own list, their own roadmap to health, so that they have some sort of a guideline. And when I started this process, I had about 15 things that's now been refined to 10. I strive to do them every day. Do I do them every day? I do not. I'm a human being. Some days I meditate, some days I don't, some days I journal, some days I don't. But like I said, if I'm experiencing a moment of anxiety, or it starts to, steamroll a little bit and I can feel it getting worse, I can always go back and look and see what's missing from my roadmap and then correct it, right? So meditation, journaling is critically important. I live real connection. I try to connect with people throughout my day. Person working behind the counter at the coffee shop, people here, where are you from? What do you do? Those are the things that it really excite me, making connections with other people. The odd thing about that is I'm incredibly introverted, and I do not typically like to be in social settings. The reason I don't like to be in social settings, and this is going to sound terrible, is because most people do not go below the surface. And I can't have a surface level interaction because it leaves me feeling very empty and lonely. And so that prevents me from wanting to engage socially in a lot of situations. Now, I run several businesses, I coach athletics, I'm interacting with people all the time. So it doesn't look like I'm introverted, but when I spend time in an environment where I'm interacting with people, I get very tired. And so it just takes a lot out of me. It's just not a natural thing, but living that connection is critically important for me to feel like I am being fulfilled, right? And then I'm bringing myself, my true self, into the relationship and engagement with the people around me. Exercise, I need to exercise regularly. I work out 5-6 times a week. I have my whole life, but now exercise is really a gift. About 25 years ago-ish, 25 years ago, I've always been a runner. I don't look like it. My kids joke that I pull a beer truck. I'm a Clydesdale. I kind of move along and, make my way down. But I've been running distance for, since I was 13. So I ran the New York Marathon a couple times. But the difference between running now and running then is it really was a form of punishment. And I was trying to inflict pain on myself in ways that were not obvious. It's hard to explain when you're suffering from addiction or depression or some level of trauma experience. You want to hurt. You want to experience that pain. And so that's what running was for me. But it's no longer that. Now it's a gift I give myself to get those endorphins flowing in my body. I live gratitude. I talked about journaling. I try to journal every day, but without fail, every day I write down something I'm grateful for, always. And people are like, well, I don't know what to write. Well, the other day I talked about this morning. I wrote that I was thankful for my legs, like literally. I'm 60 years old. My legs have accomplished so much for me, and I think that's really cool. The other day I wrote that I was thankful for my eyes, right? There's things that are obvious, but recognizing the gratitude that exists is really important. And it's one of the things that shifts and starts to control the ego. I mentioned that my ego was the CEO. It no longer is, and this is part of that practice. It's part of making your ego an employee. You got to have it. It's important for the body and mind, but it should not be and cannot be in control. I try to live being present as much as possible. Sometimes it's easier than others. I have forgiven everyone that has ever harmed me. And the most difficult person to forgive was myself. I've done a lot of really bad things. I was a very toxic person. And I was the poster child for toxicity. And flipping that script and really forgiving myself, it took me about 4 years to actually let it go. But that is a process that's critically important. And so I live this experience of forgiveness, and I talk about some of the things that took place in my life as a child. And forgiving people that are no longer alive actually can happen. And it seems like an odd thing, but I wrote a lot of letters and a lot of communications and a lot of conversations with my father specifically. And it's not about pointing blame, but it really is about understanding, embracing that, and then kind of letting it go into the universe. So my father and I have healed our relationship. He's no longer around. We could not have a conversation because of his own dysfunctionality, but living that forgiveness is critically important. Consistent sleep. I need to have 7 hours of sleep a night. If I start to waver, if my anxiety starts to bubble up, typically it's because I'm not sleeping, or I'm not exercising, or I'm not eating right, which is the next item on the list, which is good nutrition. And then I drink a lot of water. Those are my 10 things. And like I said, I try to do them every day, and the results are fairly simple for me. If I continue to practice and focus on those things, then my anxiety doesn't bubble up, and it allows me to do the things that I like to do. So the one that's at the top of the list is meditation. And so I spend a lot of time teaching people how to meditate. And about 12 years ago, I was running a business in South Carolina. And, I'm a New Yorker, so I go down to South Carolina, and I say it's the land of Christians and guns, right? So I'm in the room with 150 people, and I'm like, hey, we're all going to meditate. And they're like, no fucking way, we're not meditating. And that was the reaction. And I said, no. And a bunch of people left the room. Probably half the people walked out because they didn't want voodoo, was what I was told, that it was voodoo, or it was against their religion, or whatever it was. But it's 3 minutes of time. And people tell me they don't have time to meditate, or they can't turn their brain off. And the thing is, if you turned your brain off, you'd be dead, right? So the goal in meditation is not to shut down. The goal in meditation is to reset and get your body back to stasis and start to teach your brain and start to teach your ego that you are in control, that it is not in control. And so if I'm driving down the highway and I feel like I need to think about something, I can pull off the side of the road and spend 3 minutes listening to music, which is one of the ways that I meditate. And the way that I teach meditation is using music, because most people connect with music in a way that's deep in the soul. And so everybody's got 3.5 minutes. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? We are not Tibetan monks. We're not living on a mountain. I am living a life just like everybody else. There's a lot of white noise coming at me all the time. When I get an opportunity to shut down and meditate, I walk away from that feeling completely fulfilled and ready to go. And the reality is, I call it slowing down to speed up. The reality is that if you shut down for those 3.5 minutes, coming out the backside of that, you're more creative, you're more collaborative, you're more communicative, and you're more connected than you were going in. And so I have brought this into the business world because it helps people connect to run the companies and work together in an environment. And one of the things that, and I don't know about you, but I was taught that you separate business from personal, and I don't live that. I am me all the time, and I walk into every situation, and it can take some getting used to, and I don't cross any lines or do anything that's inappropriate, but making real connections with people that you work with is a really magical experience. And so I have taught people to meditate before meetings. And sometimes if they push back aggressively or they're not into it, we'll just breathe, right? And so when you're in a community like this and you experience this breath work together, it gets everybody connected in a way that didn't happen before. And like I said, you walk out of that in a much more interconnected way, and you now are ready to go and tackle your life. So what I would like to do, if everybody's up for it, is do a quick meditation. So here's what we're going to do. My daughter just called me. We're going to do 3 deep breaths. We're going to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, right? 3 times. I'm going to ask you to put your feet flat on the floor. You can put your hands anywhere you want. You can close your eyes, or you can fix your gaze on something, a wall, the floor, whatever you're comfortable with. We'll breathe 3 times. I'm going to play a song. As the song is playing, what I'd ask you to do is just kind of follow it, whether it's the music or the lyrics or both. If your brain starts to go in a different direction, like, oh, I just saw an accident on the highway, that's cool. If you want to bring it back, just bring it back to your throat, because the breath is the most present thing we have. We don't even have to think about it. It's always there. Respiration is constantly happening. So just bring it back to your throat. We're going to go for about 3.5 minutes, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I like this song, so we'll do this one. And then on the back side of the song, I would ask you to stay in your meditation. We'll do 3 deep breaths coming out, and then we'll end it, and then we can open things up to questions and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So here we go. Through the nose, out through the mouth. One more big breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And now just breathe normally and breathe however you feel. All right, just stay in that for a couple of seconds. And we'll come out with 3 deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And now your biggest breath, breathe in, breathe out. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you for doing that. You know, the last thing I'll leave you with, and again, I'm an open book. I'll talk about anything. But when we connect with ourselves, the path forward becomes clear. And we literally learn that life's magic is in these smallest of moments. And there's always coffee in the fridge. Always. It does not stop. I really thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.